Today we are joined by Kristen Williams and April Hughes to discuss some common RBS compliance issues with vessel registration. Kristen devoted 20 years to the Coast Guard, spending most of her time investigating pollution incidents and marine casualties. Upon her retirement from active duty, Kristen transitioned to civilian life to work in the Coast Guard Office of Investigations and Analysis as a missile data analyst. In 2017, she transferred to her current job in the Office of Boating Safety, where she manages 26 states, I'm one of them, multiple nonprofit grants, and represents the office on various committees and organizations. April Hughes began her career with the Arizona Game and Fish Department in 1999. Since then, she has diligently worked her way up within the agency. She currently serves as the Watercraft Section Administrator. April has also been a vital member of the NASBA Vert Committee since 2012 and is now the longest serving member on the committee. Please welcome Kristen and April.
Thank you.
Can y'all hear us?
I got it. I got the clicker.
Go. Okay, so neither one of us are going to read these slides to you, but we really encourage you to ask a lot of questions. I am also not going to go over the regulation requirements. Really this presentation is to identify the discrepancies we find, not to talk about the requirements. So these are the different ideas or topics we're going to discuss today. And at any time, please feel free to raise your hand and ask any questions.
So our first one is the application of certificate of number. So what Kristen has noticed during her compliance visits is that missing fields required for the applications. So such as the application type, telling you if it's a new boat registration, if it's a renewal, transfer of ownership. Also, the vessel model has been missing, and propulsion type and engine type. Also, unidentified abbreviations or codes within the fields were incomplete or with unauthorized terms. There again, with your vessel type, hull material, propulsion type, engine drive, and fuel type. So what we have here is an example of the Game and Fish application that she recently visited our site. And for years on our application, we had for the application type, we had our CSRs for office use only. Once we did the transaction, we would code it as a new boat or a transfer. The customers never really saw this because we really couldn't state if you're a new person, if you're a person coming in and never boated before, you're not going to know what type of application or what kind of transaction you're doing. So we would always acknowledge what it was, and that's what we put in the system. Well, according to Coast Guard rule, she has here your CFR 33, I now have to revise my form to list somewhere in the application to be checking off new boat, transfer, renewal within there. So the applicant knows what is taking place at that time.
Yeah, also, you'll see the requirement, propulsion type and engine drive type have to be on the application, not one or the other. You don't get to pick and choose. The CFR site listed there tells you specifically what is required. You can always add more, but you cannot take away from what's in the CFR. If you decide to have codes or abbreviations, you have to have a key code somewhere. So if your code or abbreviation is for engine drive type 4, I don't know what 4 means. So please have an abbreviation or a key code on the back side so we can identify what these codes represent. Are there any questions on the application? Awesome. Okay.
So just as Kristen was saying too, you can add to, but you can't take away. In my training courses too, with my regional staff and everything, when they're registering commercial boats, we don't have a lot of commercial boats in Arizona. And I told them, you guys are coding this incorrectly. And they would say, well, just take it off the application. I go, no, this is Coast Guard regulations, so I have to have them on there. So the same thing applies with pod drives. I don't know, Arizona doesn't get too many pod drives either, but it needs to be on there. So all the states are consistent, so.
I'll let you take this one.
So the other one that Kristen called me out on, I'm just kidding, is an application for certificate of number or your dealer or manufacturer application form. So she stated here that the missing fields that most states and myself had missing fields of the number previously issued to vessel, which I was a bit confused on that because when we issue a dealer registration, it's not identified to a boat, it's for demoing only. So that number really doesn't transfer to another boat. However, she states other states may have that. So I do have to list that in my revision as well. The application type, once again, it's not stating new, renewal, transfer of ownership. There again, in Arizona, it's for demo purposes only, and it's always considered a new boat registration. And also primary operation. I questioned all three of these because there again, you can only be a dealer in Arizona to demo watercraft on, on our waters. So, but according to Coast Guard, I must have this on the application.
Any questions? All right, next. All right, so the certificate of number, the most often fields that are missing are as listed. Again, you don't get to pick and choose if you want to have propulsion type or engine drive type. They both are required by federal law, which I did not write, to be on the certificate of number. There are different forms. Your certificate of number, which you also call a registration, it can be double-sided, it can be different shapes, but it has to be able to be folded down to the required size as found in the CFR. And every state does it different. I found 2 different examples just to show you different ways states do it. And yes, I did get permission from these states to use them as examples. Not finding as many issues with the certificate of number now as we were several years ago. Okay, fees attached to your certificate of number. We did have another presentation on this earlier, but as you can see, and as it is written in the CFR and was recently clarified by Captain Glendy, you cannot have anyone in your state say, oh, well, we want to start charging, koi pond fees to put a koi pond over here. You can't attach those fees to your certificate of number. Only the designated fees can be allowed to be attached to the certificate of number. If you have AIS fees or ANS fees or whatever acronym your state calls them, they must be bifurcated or decoupled. You can charge them, but you cannot make it contingent upon receiving the certificate of number that those fees be paid. This can be very confusing. If you have questions, please reach out to your state program coordinator. Brian Moore is in the back of the room, Van is in the back of the room, and myself. We're the 3 state program coordinators on staff right now. You're gonna get one of us. Even if you can't reach your personal state program coordinator, give one of us a call. We all interpret the regulations the same way. Are there any questions on the fees? Van?
Just one thing to add. We discovered through one of Christian's state visits, a lot of you have automated systems online. That online system has to meet the same criteria. The state actually had it in their law to do it correctly, but online you couldn't do it. You couldn't choose not to pay those fees and still get a certificate of number. So you have to make sure that what you do in the office is the same thing you do online.
Okay. You want to take this one?
Oh, so I didn't get called out on this one, but temporary certificate of numbers. So missing fields that Kristen has seen from other states too is the type of propulsion, signature of owner, date of issuance, and your expiration date is not to exceed 60 days. In Arizona, we have a 45-day temporary.
Which is fine. You can have less than 60 days, but you cannot have a 90-day temporary. And if you say that this temporary expires 60 days from date of issuance, but you don't have the date of issuance on your temporary, nobody knows when that clock starts. So make sure you have your date of issuance on there or have a specific date when it expires.
Does anybody have temporary registrations in the room here?
Yeah, Van.
One quick thing to add to that, that doesn't mean when it expires, you can reissue it after 60 days, by the way. It's 60 days, period, for a temporary certificate. We found a couple of states that would reissue. You can't do that.
Yes, we don't reissue them either, so.
that's.
I'm just gonna make that acknowledgeable too. Yeah, we don't reissue those.
Okay, I'm going to let you take
So
this.
the HIN verification process, in 2017, the Coast Guard regulated all states to verify all hull identification numbers on watercraft. That is through your renewal transactions, your new boats, your transfers. Arizona, we came out with a HIN verification form that we send to customers if we acknowledge that sometime in the system or something on their title was showing an invalid hull format. And once we did a verification of a picture or a rubbing of it, we had to make sure that the manufacturer or the state issued HIN was permanently affixed to the watercraft. So this is an example of our form that we have here. And this is also not to the public, but our CSRs can, these is a fillable document, because we found in the past, our CSRs, handwriting those in, customers have misinterpreted alpha characters and numerical characters. So if you do end up having this form, which you should, but I do recommend having it a fillable form so it's typed in so there's no misunderstanding of what that is to be permanently attached to their watercraft. So we visibly have some illustrations clearly for the customers to understand. Once they walk away with that, they are to send that back into the department with proof of how it's been permanently affixed.
Also, if you're going to have a form worth the HIN validation and you have more or less than 12 characters for your HIN, that's not good. HIN, no matter what format it is 12 characters, period. I've gone to states where they say, well, it's around 15 characters. No, it's 12. It's not 12 and a half, it's not 11. So if you do create a form, make sure you only have spots for 12 characters. And then if something is wrong with the HIN, if they proffer you a HIN for a Mako, but then the title is for another manufacturer, and you pull up the MIC in the Coast Guard database and it's for a third manufacturer, that's problematic. That's why we're validating these HINs, because we want to make sure what is proffered on the boat matches the title, which matches the certificate of number, which matches your registration, because it all goes into the vessel identification system. It's so all the states and territories can talk to each other and share this information. Are there any questions on this? Yes, Ramona.
What was your success on when you sent those out to getting it back?
Very successful. We also inform the customer too that they have a certain time frame, because we have 30 days to process anything in our department. So within 30 days of the customer not receiving, the department not receiving this back in the mail, we close their boat record, make their registration invalidated until it's confirmed. Yeah. So again, here is the form that we use, because you notice we have AZZ pre-printed on ours. That's going to be for our state issued HIN. And of course, with the previous form too, in 2017, being on the VERT committee, we've also established that any boat that is within 10 years old and the manufacturer is in business, they are required to have that corrected.
If the HIN is wrong.
There's no state issued HIN to be issued to that boat. The manufacturer is required to fix that hull identification number. Okay.
So when you issue a state assigned HIN, your first two-letter abbreviation will be your state abbreviation followed by a Z. That third character being a Z, we know your state assigned that HIN. Sometimes you will see a C, G, Z. That's when the Coast Guard assigns a HIN. But any vessel that you come across where the third character is a Z and it was not issued by your state, if you have any problems with that vessel, contact the state counterpart for that state to find out what's going on. I don't understand. When you issue a state assigned HIN, if there's a partial HIN, an incomplete HIN, an incorrect HIN already on the vessel, do not cover it with the state assigned HIN. Place it below the state assigned HIN. That is in a PowerPoint presentation you can find on the Coast Guard website. It's on the NASBLA website. Search for HIN, and there's a whole PowerPoint. There's a policy letter with the Coast Guard endorsing this PowerPoint to show the vessel registrars how to properly assign a state assigned HIN and how it should properly be permanently attached to the vessel. But do not cover up a previously existing HIN, even if it's wrong. Even if it has 25 characters, don't cover it. Any questions? Van, any additional comments on that?
The one thing to be aware of
Yes.
is if you find one that has 14 numbers, what it's going to look like is you're going to have 2 letters, a dash, and then the bulk area at the end. Those first 2 letters are nothing more than country codes if the vessel is imported.
Correct.
Okay, so don't, that's not part of the HIN, that's just the country code, is all that is, so don't include that.
Also, when issuing a state hull identification number 2, we would be using the new format. If anybody knows anything about the hull identification numbers, you have the 3 formats that, you know, through the years have happened. We currently use the new format,
Correct.
and they want you to use at the end, not the year of the boat, but the year that you've issued the hull identification number.
And this is all outlined in that PowerPoint I was
Yes.
mentioning, which is, if you can't find it, contact your state program coordinator. We will definitely send you a copy of it.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Yeah, one thing just for everybody to know, when we were going through this, the biggest thing that I found is that the majority of time when you had a HIN that wasn't conforming, it was normally a paperwork issue. So if you've got one that's not conforming, the only place to go to get the right answer is on the vessel itself. Get a picture, get an etching of that HIN, and then take it in, and, because it could have been a typo on the manufacturer origin document, it could have been somebody typo in DMV. Always go off the one that's actually stamped on it.
I like that. Because we have, in the, while back when this was happening, we were told if it was an invalid hull identification number, issue a state-issued HIN. Yeah, our CSRs were going crazy. And then we also found other states were doing the same thing. And then upon inspection since 2017 of verifying these hull identification numbers, we find they have valid manufactured HINs on them and with state-issued HINs. So it was becoming quite troublesome at that time. So
The last thing you want to do is have somebody go, if you can figure out what really happened, because like a 1 could look like an I, somebody puts it in, and they typed it in on the certificate of numbers wrong when they first registered it or whatever. The first thing when somebody calls me in the office about this, I say, what's the one on the boat? That's the one you go off of. Anything on the
Yeah.
paperwork, it could be wrong, that's where you start.
and that is troublesome with some of the manufacturers too, is they just do that straight line. They
Yeah.
don't define it as being numerical or alpha. It's just a straight line. But I said, if it goes with the format, I'm going to use the numerical, because you know, you can't have the I or a Q.
That's an I, not a 1. Well, if it's back in the last 4 numbers for the manufacturer year and model year.
Yeah.
It just saves a 1.
Right.
You know, it's not rocket science.
Exactly. And we need to remember too that the hull identification numbers are important. You know, within the first 10 years for Coast Guard is for recall purposes with the manufacturer. After that, it's pretty much, you know, up to the states with those hull identification numbers for the legacy of the boat for law enforcement purposes. So we also have in our system, if we do issue a state hull identification number, that we keep the previous serial number or invalid hull ID number on record for our law enforcement. So.
Any more questions? Okay. Also, things we're finding with state-assigned HIN is, and I will read this one, a lot of states, when you get new databases and you create all these wonderful new systems to issue registrations, the system that's being created is only validating the HIN against the current year format. There are actually 3 different formats for a HIN. There's the current year, the model year,
Straight year.
and the straight year. If your database only recognizes the current year format and it doesn't recognize the other 2 formats, you could be issuing a state-assigned HIN for a vessel that already has a valid HIN. So make sure that your database or your CSRs know that there are 3 different formats that are valid. We are currently, only the current year format is being used, but some older vessels have the model year format and other vessels had the straight year format. So just before you issue a state-assigned HIN, make sure you're not kicking it out because it doesn't recognize the one HIN format that you have programmed into your system. Improperly formatted HIN, again, if there's too many characters, not enough characters, the alphanumeric characters are all mixed up, double check it, as Walt was saying, or not Walt, Dan was saying, go against the paperwork, go to the vessel, do a pencil rubbing, do a photo, double check what's there. Your LEOs know where the hidden HIN is. If that's foreign to you, please talk to your BLA, but there is a secondary HIN on the vessel. Your LEOs know where to find that. So if you can't validate it on the transom, look for that secondary HIN, and that will help you clarify a lot of potential problems. And then we've had states issuing HINs, the exact HIN in the proper format to more than one vessel. No, you may, one HIN per vessel, one vessel per HIN. Do not issue 5 vessels the exact same HIN. That'll be a problem. We will find it. Don't do that, please. And then do not issue HINs. I repeat, do not issue state-assigned HINs to vessel manufacturers, period, long break. If you have a vessel manufacturer, they have a MIC. They create their own HINs. If you're issuing a state-assigned HIN to a vessel manufacturer, you will be getting a call from our office. Not from me, probably from Van or Scott or Vern or Captain Glendy. That is no. Any questions on no?
Oh, I couldn't believe when she told me that. I was like, what?
And then also, when you issue a state-assigned HIN, you have to make sure that that HIN was permanently affixed to the vessel. How you do that is up to you and your state. Nevada has a great program. They issue these metal plates that get riveted onto the vessel below the previously existing HIN if there is one. How you do it in your state is up to you, but it must be permanently affixed. That is in regulation. Don't have them, take a Sharpie. Don't have them put a little, name tag sticker on there with the number on it. It has to be permanently affixed so it can get through the weather and the elements. Any questions on this? Dan?
Just to go to the permanently affixed, there are some states that use, it is a tape format, but the design of it is so that if you live in the corner, it don't disappear. So it's, know that you're doing damage with it, the letter goes away. Other ones, Rankin in Nevada provides stickers or whatever, not a lot, or the plates. Some states do that, not every state does.
Right.
There's several ways to make that happen, but it is permanent.
Well, I know I'm a presenter, but I have a question on those ones because I worked with Ohio with Rick Herrera on our metal plates. And we bought the stamping machines and it comes with a pretty good adhesive until they get riveted in. We do have rivets that we do rivet into the boats for the customers too, upon their request to do that. But we used to have those stickers back in the day. We had them, the control stickers, until a HIN was permanently affixed. And through the years, sometimes, those stickers are pretty good through the years, weathering with the water and the heat and stuff out there in Arizona. But the numbers would fade off and come to find out the customers never permanently attached it. But to my understanding, when you permanently place it, that it's to the point that it it does damage to the watercraft knowing. So if you pull the sticker off, is what I'm asking, Van, does it do damage to the back of the boat to if an officer was to inspect that to go, looks like there was a HIN on this at one point, but not now?
In this case, the damage is the fact that the number disappears. And so now it becomes an issue where you have a vessel without a whole identification.
See, and our control stickers used to do that in the day too. They would just fade, but it's not permanently fixed then. Okay. So technically they're not legal to be used, or?
Right. If they're going to fade, if they're not weather resistant, then they don't fit.
Yeah.
Again, it's called theft of engine tape. What we call it. You see it on stuff in the grocery store, and they try to lift it off and all that. It's like, like hard to have.
Not to mention, since we started this program too with the HIN verification, we've gotten some pretty, I save it in a folder, I have some pretty responses back from our customers of what they consider permanent.
Oh, yeah.
I actually had he wrote it on a piece of paper and put it over with packing tape. I'm like, how did you read the instructions? It's going into the water, it's paper. So just some examples that we've gotten, but.
Any questions on this. Okay. That pretty much concludes the most common discrepancies and issues that I find as a state program coordinator during my compliance reviews. This is not an all-inclusive list. We definitely find other errors, but these are the most common, sorry, Mark. These are the most common errors we find. If you have questions, like April just discussed with Van, on how you're interpreting regulation, or you don't understand something your state program coordinator tells you, it's open dialogue. We are not here to direct and mandate unless we are bound by regulation and code and law. So it's a partnership. We want to work with you. There's a lot of things like AIS and ANS. We fully support states with their AIS and ANS programs, the fees. You just cannot attach it and make it a condition upon which the certificate of number is issued. That's where we have to come in and say, we have to decouple it, we have to bifurcate it. You pick the term, but it has to be removed from the issuance of the certificate of number. This is how you can get a hold of either April or I. We are both on the VERT committee. And question?
Question, Kristen, just to go back to the HIN PowerPoint. That was developed, I think, 2018, 2019. VERT is in the process of revising that. We actually wanted it out this year, but in conjunction with the Coast Guard. And I've had people ask me, well, why do we do this? Well, in working with the Coast Guard, our point of view is program uniformity across the country to a certain point. Now, we realize each state does their thing, but this is one way along with some other things that VERT's doing to promote program uniformity. So I encourage you to get that PowerPoint. It has a lot of information in it, what they just talked about. We hope to have that revised sometime in 23 and out.
Great, thank you. Anything else? All right, well, thank you for attending. That concludes our presentation. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to anybody if you can find us.
And I'd be more than happy to send our HIN placement form to any of the states that would like to use that as well. Okay? Thank you.